Welcome, everyone. Welcome to ThursdAI, the December 11th edition. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with weights and biases. And I want to say welcome to the show. And also, I want to add Wolfram in here. Wolfram, what's up? How you doing? Let me just add you to the stage. How you doing, friend?
Hi, man.
We are live on December 11th I'm recording right now from new studio. As you guys can see, I'm a traveling podcaster. The studio was set up for me by the great friends of Chroma. If you need your vector database, Chroma is the way to go. It's also open source. So shout out to Jeff, Uber, and TJ and other folks who helped me with the setup here. Super quick. I really appreciate it. We're also live on Twitter Spaces, this time with video. So let me show you. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about this week. So this week, we're going to cover what happened this week. And then next week, we're going to have a special episode that will recap most of the year. So that's going to be awesome. All right, welcome, folks. Welcome, Jan. Welcome, Nistan. Welcome, LDJ. Welcome to the show. What is the top one thing in AI this week for you? Let's start with Nistan.
My favorite one was the Mistral Devstral small model. That one's reaching, 68%. The reason that was pretty important was that's what we had, I think, Sonnet 4 or 3.7 before. So the stuff that was cutting edge just 6 months ago, now it's a model that you run on a 3090 at home. This stuff is just, the goalposts keep shifting, but that's pretty cool to me, because I think that might just be like the best small agentic model for home use right now.
Yeah, hell yeah, I'm joining on that, 100%. That's a good model, sir, 100%. Also comes with a really cool harness, a Mistral vibe. And it's great to see another player which is committed to open source, which is always a great thing. But yeah, look at the size of the model and what it can do. And imagine, I don't know, a couple of months ago, it's not even that far. This is like kind of Sonnet 4, I think. And you can run this at home. And when, I don't know, I still remember last year when we got Sonnet 3.7, it was mind-blowing, but we all got a vibe that is, okay, that's a step change, something you're not going to be able to run, I don't know for how long, and now you have a better thing at home, and it's not even a year. It's crazy. Seriously, it's just crazy. That's mine. Alex,
Yeah.
here.
We'll move to Wolfram. Wolfram, go ahead.
Yeah, so I picked my choice before you asked everybody. So I'm always, again, picking Mistral again. I picked it last week. I pick it this week. The models, there are two, a big one and a small one, like YamZ and Nistan. They are great models and they are Apache licensed. It's not just a developer license or anything, but it's really a full Apache license. Amazing. And the Mistral vibe, that is what excites me the most about this, that they have their own IDE, which is also Apache license. It's on GitHub, and open source means everybody can contribute. Mistral, 2 thumbs up from me this week again.
LJ, your turn.
Yeah, today there's a few exciting small models like Devstral. Since you guys already mentioned Devstral, I'll mention April 1.6. And it's from this company that seems to be based in Quebec called ServiceNow, which has been under the radar. Right now, it seems like this is the best 15 billion parameter model. It's significantly better than even GPT 5 mini in certain ways, even competing with the full-size DeepSeek R1 in certain capabilities and things like Tau Bench and some interesting benchmarks that aren't really considered to be easily benchmaxable. I tested it myself and it's pretty interesting as well. So I think that's going to be something worth taking a look at.
And I thank you, LDJ. Can I reserve mine until the next 2 hours? Because folks,
wink, wink.
The whole
There's a smell in the air, right?
Yes, there's a Christmas smell in the air that supposedly OpenAI is sending garlic smells around. So I just addressed the rumors, even though we don't do them. But this week it was absolutely crazy because even the ChatGPT app posted some screenshots of Sam Altman saying, "Hey Sam, what are you cooking?" And Sam is replying, I don't know, but it's going to be pasta and it's going to be garlic at some point. So I think we're going to get, based on all those hints, there's going to be GPT 5.2 at some point, either today or very soon. Hey everyone, Alex here. Before we get into the full show, I want to give you a proper breakdown of what happened with OpenAI dropping GPT 5.2 live during our show. This one is a big one, and as it happened at the end of our show as breaking news, I wanted to summarize all of it and bring it to you post-editing. So let's go. Let's dive into this. So here's the deal. OpenAI launched GPT 5.2 in the ChatGPT app and the API, including GPT 5.2 Pro. It's now state-of-the-art across many, many benchmarks, except I think one. And now to the numbers that actually matter. First, AIME 2025, the Math Olympiad benchmark. GPT 5.2 scores 100%, a perfect score. That's a 6-point jump over 5.1 thinking. And it feels like we've hit saturation on that one, which is incredible. ARC-AGI 2, which is supposedly a very hard benchmark, 5.1 was at 17%. 5.2 is 52.9%. 52.9%. It's a 3x improvement on ARC-AGI 2, which was confirmed by Greg Kamrat, the president of ARC-AGI. And third, GDP eval. This is OpenAI's new benchmark from just September that tests models on 1,300 real-world economically valuable tasks. Things like writing legal briefs, financial analysis, that kind of work. When it was launched, Opus 4.1 was the best with 47%. GPT 5.2 just hits 70.9% on this benchmark. This is a 23-point jump over the previous leader, which is quite incredible. I've also had a chance to collect responses from the folks on Twitter and elsewhere who got early access to this model, and here's some of them. Ethan Malik from Wharton called it very impressive. He had it generate a complex 3D shaders with realistic physics in a single shot. Matt Schumer from Hyperride, the friend of the pod, has been using GPT 5.2 Pro for 2 weeks and says that he cannot live without it. It thinks for over an hour on hard problems and nails things no other models can touch. Though, keep in mind, GPT 5.2 Pro is very, very expensive as well. Box CEO Aaron Levy shared the internal benchmark showing a 7-point improvement on enterprise reasoning tasks with twice the speed from previous models. And of course, I already mentioned him, a friend of the show, Greg Kamrat from ARC-AGI, the president. He ran the actual benchmark tests. He said that the Pro with extended thinking hits 90% of ARC-AGI 1, but he also warned we're now in the late stage of the S-curve and the progress is going to be slow from there. I don't believe you, Greg. We'll see. And a nuance assessment from Dan Schipper at Every, who called it mostly incremental updates for day-to-day use. It's still not as good as Opus, and Pro is slow, sometimes thinking for hours. And some testers hit reliability issues on the hardest tasks. Now, this could be an earlier checkpoint. We don't know. And we do trust Dan Schipper and Every team for their analysis. So let's get to pricing super quick. On pricing, 5.2 is about 300% cheaper than Opus 4.5. Opus 4.5 is great, but it's very expensive. For coding with larger context, it undercuts Gemini 3 Pro as well. Thinking runs at only $1.75 per million tokens input. And the Pro one is very expensive. $168 per 1 million output tokens. It's insane. I ran a few prompts today. I already racked up like $5. It's ridiculous. So bottom line, this is OpenAI's response to Gemini 3 surge and people adopting Gemini 3. The one that reportedly triggered the code red thing internally from last week that we told you. And based on benchmarks, it's a serious response. One thing that I wanted to just cover, I don't even have this in my notes, that the long context MRCR benchmark that OpenAI released, this model significantly outperforms the previous 5.1 model with nearly perfect recollection of long context over 128,000 tokens. And I think that this is the one to watch because sometimes models release these evals and you don't really know if it's better or not. Long context comprehension is something that most companies are measuring themselves on. And I think that this one is a very significant one. There's a lot more we found out during the live show, so please tune in and listen to the rest of it. But I just wanted to bring you a quick recap of the most important things about GPT 5.2. And now let's get back to the show. If that doesn't come, I think for me, the announcement of the AAIF is the most interesting news from this week. And we're going to tell you about this in the TLDR. This week, Anthropic has donated MCP into the Linux Foundation, right? So now there's a dedicated home for the MCP spec that used to be Anthropics, and that's now under the Linux Foundation. It has an independent team. It's supported by OpenAI as well. OpenAI has also donated Agents.md. So we'll definitely talk more about this and what this means. But I think for me, this would be like one piece of news that is definitely a highlight here. All right. I feel like, dude, with this camera quality, I feel like doing like professional ads. ChromaDB, the VectorDB, and the platform as well are great friends. I'm getting hosted in their office for this podcast. So I'm very thankful to Jeff and TJ and some other folks here as well. And just a reminder, again, next week, we will have a recap of the whole year. This is our 51st episode of this year. And based on the 50 episodes before this and this one, there's a collection of news of a yearly recap. Right. So I think it's time for TLDR, folks. Let's get it going, and then we'll dive in. Welcome to the TLDR. This is a section of ThursdAI where we talk about everything that we have to cover on the show super quick, so that if you don't have that much time, you'll be able to just listen to this piece and then decide if you want to keep the rest of the show. The show is also chaptered everywhere you get your podcast. So let's go. Today, your host is Alex Volkov, AI evangelist with Weights and Biases. The co-host, everyone's here. Wolf from Raven Wolf, Jan Peleg, Nistan Tahira, and LDJ at LDJ Confirmed on X. So feel free to follow all of us for your AI news. We'll start with open source. There's a bunch of open source. I'll cover what I have, and then I'll let the host kind of add links as well. Essential AI launches RNJ1. It's a Frontier 8B model excelling in code, agentic task, math, and STEM. I've been waiting for Essential AI. Essential AI has been kind of on our radar for a while, and so I'm very much looking forward to this. It's led by Ashish Vaswani, one of the 7 co-authors of the Transformers paper. So hopefully they know a thing or two about Transformers. We'll talk about this. Folks, Mistral AI is on a roll for the second week. Mistral has released Devstral 2, supposedly state-of-the-art open coding models family, and also the Mistral Vibe CLI agent. That's going to be great. We're going to talk about the CLI agent as well. Yeah, go ahead.
So, StarCloud trains world's first LLM in space on NVIDIA H100 aboard satellite. So, from what I've seen on this, this company called StarCloud, it's either their own satellite or a satellite in which it has an NVIDIA H100 running. And what they did is took Andrej Karpathy's, one of the OpenAI co-founders. He has something called NanoChat, and it's an open source project of a very small architecture LLM. And they trained that on the works of Shakespeare on the H100, and then they also ran it in space to actually chat and query it, get completions out of it. So the world's first training and inference of LLM in space.
Let's go.
Fucking accelerate, put the GPUs in space, man. I'm not sure why we're doing that, but let's do it.
This is also open source, but basically there's this thing called Putnam math competition, and we'll talk about the Putnam when we get to this. There's 2 models, both I think. Actually, one is open source and one is this 4-month startup Axiom Prover that both competed at Putnam. So if you guys remember, we talk about IMO a lot, so International Math Olympiad, and apparently Putnam math is significantly harder. For me, even the IMOs are really hard, so like I can't compare between the hardness of the 2. But these models always look for places to hill climb, and so we have 2 models. One from our friends at News Research released Nomos 1. It's a 30B math model scoring 87 out of 120 on Putnam, and then another 4-month-old startup Axiom Prover. They got a good score there as well, though this is not open source. So this kind of moves us away from open source, but there's like definitely an excitement when a new math competition is announced. So Jina AI released a Jina VLM, 2.4 billion vision language model, super small one. And it's really interesting to see that these models are trying to attempt SOTA on different benchmarks, on VQA specifically, in document understanding. And then I have a test that I would love to run live on stage here, the counting test. Just counting. The Gemini is so far, by far, the best one. ZAI also released their GLM 4.6. If you guys remember, ZAI is a GLM 4.5 and 4.6 are great models. They released a vision version of this, leading open source VLM with native tool calling and 128 context window. And we have Perceptron. Perceptron is releasing Isaac 0.2. It's 1 billion, 2 billion VLMs with hybrid reasoning and focus tools and agentic upgrade. So for those of you who are doing use cases with language models with eyes or VLMs, there's a bunch of offerings also in open source from great companies, and they all fail my counting test. So actually, I do want to build, Wolfram, maybe you're going to help me. I do want to build a counting bench. Just take a bunch of pictures with a bunch of random stuff on them and then count them as humans, write it down, and then run all these counting benches via these models because we want to exceed.
Yeah, I've also thought about it like fruit discovery or something, where it has to recognize what kind of fruit it is. They sometimes get confused with that as well. Yeah, let's do a benchmark.
Let's do a benchmark. All right, let's open the bar. In this case, though, we're actually going to do it. We're going to continue on the TLDR, folks, so as not to get sidetracked.
Yeah, it's been a pretty hot week for GLM, and there's actually another model missing here from GLM called GLM TTS.
That's true.
It allows conversational and audio functionality.
Yep. We will definitely add this to the show. In order to cover everything, we'll tell you everything that was released. We won't be able to cover everything at length, but yeah, definitely. LDJ, thank you. Let's go to big companies, LLMs and APIs. As I mentioned in my opening block, Anthropic and OpenAI all together collaborate with the Linux Foundation. Anthropic is donating MCP as a spec. OpenAI is donating Agents.md as a spec. Blocks is donating Goose as a product. And the Linux Foundation will host the open source agentic AI projects, and they will shepherd their development. And I think it's a great idea, so we're definitely going to cover this. I almost forgot about this one until somebody in the comments shouted out. So shout out Sean. This is a very interesting development. OpenAI plus Disney just announced a mutual understanding. So we're going to dive into this, but basically now you'd be able to generate Disney characters in Sora. And also as part of this, Disney will invest $1 billion into OpenAI with a possible extension for more. OpenAI and Disney is a very interesting development because actual IP is coming, and Disney has Star Wars and has like a bunch of other stuff. So that's great because part of why people got excited about Sora is the characters that you can generate with Sora. I think that this is in big companies, but folks, please let me know if there's anything that I'm missing there.
I have one in mind.
Go ahead.
Something that just dropped about 30 minutes ago is Cursor's new feature for ability to design directly in your code base for visual elements and for web pages and things like that. So literally like click and dragging elements and being able to just resize things with your mouse. Inside Cursor.
Yesterday announced like a new bug 2.0 type thing.
Yeah, debugging.
So I will say Cursor will continue to release some stuff. We'll put this under tools because Google Stitch is there. So let's do Cursor announced a full LDJ. If you can send me this, it's great. Direct visual editing.
Google also released some preview text-to-speech models, Gemini 2.5 Flash and Pro, with enhanced control and expressivity. So optimized for low latency, high quality, can generate tones and moods and feelings in a way like cheerful or somber and serious, context aware, and it can maintain consistent character voice across 24 supported languages, which is quite something. It's available in the Gemini API and in AI Studio. So this is coming to other options later, but right now you can use it via API or the AI Studio.
Amazing. I was waiting for this release. I had a little bit of an early access to that, play with it just a little bit. They sound great. We can test them out as well. I think we're almost there, folks, almost there in the TLDR. And it's been a minute, so we need to start with the actual show. But I will just cover that this week's buzz.
I have one more.
All right, go ahead.
Because Qwen also released Qwen 3 Omni Flash update, new version. So a better Omni version from them. I don't think it's open. I think it's only API.
I looked and I tried to figure out what's new there, and I played solely on Qwen chat. So we'll definitely shout out Qwen because they're friends of the pod. Great folks, released like a significant version as well. So Qwen Omni was also updated. Right, folks, I think it's time. Oh, yeah, one last thing. This week's buzz from Weights and Biases. There's now a direct integration into OpenRouter that I'll show you, and it's super cool. I think it's time to get started with open source.
Speaking of OpenRouter, by the way, there was an interesting article. It was released last Thursday, but we didn't cover it on the show. So they did a year in review for all the LLM usage on OpenRouter. I'm not sure if you have seen it. because it's very interesting to see what models are being used, for what they are being used, and so on. That is also a very interesting article. Go to Open Router, it's right at the top. They have a link there, and it's a big read, very big article, but yeah, it's very insightful. I found it very interesting.
We will absolutely cover this, Wolfram. I think that this could be one of the top discussion points for us today in the big companies and LLMs. How over 100 trillion tokens or some crazy number like this is used based on Open Router. Obviously, Open Router is skewed because people also use directly ChatGPT, etc. So they don't cover those use cases. But yeah, let's definitely cover this. Thank you, Wolfram. Thank you, folks. Folks, I think it's time to start with open source. Let's go. Open source AI, let's get it started. And we are back in Open Source AI on ThursdAI Corner, where we cover everything open source. And I think that we should start with the small potatoes. Folks, who wants to start with... You guys want to talk about Essential and this guy, RNG1?
Yeah, I can get started. RNJ1, it stands for Ramanujan 1. Ramanujan being a famous Indian mathematician from the past. And this is getting really good scores in coding, agentic tasks, math, and STEM, at least for its size. And this is from a lab called Essential AI, which is led by Ashish Vaswani, who is the lead author of the Transformers paper, Attention is All You Need. And I think he's one of, but yeah, so really interesting scores here. It's open source, it's on Hugging Face. I believe it's especially good at some math and STEM abilities, which would make sense. It's named after Ramanujan.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they trained on TPUs and AMD GPUs and across 8.7 trillion tokens, as noted here. And it's really interesting how so I don't think they released a reasoning version technically, or if this is reasoning at all, it's at least compressed into a way that it's not in like its own window. And I feel like this is something we've been lacking actually lately, especially in the smaller models, is a really good non-reasoning, more direct models that have more of the, I guess, more intuitive feeling, for lack of a better word. And
I
this seems to
know
have more of
for a
that.
fact that many folks, at least as I have conversations, they don't like reasoning. They prefer straight up models from a year ago that could achieve the same scores. And I've had conversations this week with folks in San Francisco. The folks prefer non-reasoning models. So it's very interesting. And also, there was a chat about Mistral last week that was compared to other reasoning models, but it was non-reasoning, get very good scores as well. If you guys remember this, go ahead, Luigi.
Yeah, that's really the main point here. The amount of training compute used here. So it is performing similarly to one of the Quen models while using about a quarter of the training compute. So that's just a lot of progress in terms of algorithmic efficiency, the efficiency of the data that you're putting through the model during training, and overall impressive work from Essential AI. And hopefully we get more of this progress from the Western labs and open source like this.
Yeah, we also want to shout out, this is in addition to last week's conversation with Lucas Atkins. This is also a completely US-based open source. This is a full pre-train, full model train, right? This is not a fine-tune of anything. This is like an additional US-based lab open source models from scratch, pre-training and everything. So we have, let's move to, let's talk about the satellite. I think satellite is cool. Let's talk about satellites. Why is it important for us to have AI in space? Let's go.
All right, you guys start. I was trying to calculate how many GPUs it would take to take care of my grandma. And it would take at least 8 H100s running at 500, 600 watts each. So about 5 kilowatts worth of power for at least 3 or 4 hours. And what most countries and places don't realize that in order for AGI to help us, we're going to need a lot more GPUs and a lot more power. So those that are not investing in power generation, they're going to be dependent and fully dependent on those who do. So now, what about this whole space thing? What most people don't realize is that the Starlink V3 satellites, they're already running at 20 kilowatts. So you only need 5 kilowatts, maybe with some optimizations, to run 8 H100s. So you can technically run 32 H100s on a single satellite, which we already have. And those are being deployed. And given the costs of how much these model costs, the actual per weight today market rate cost is pretty good. It's actually pretty good to just send them out there and then they have continuous power. So this is not some far-fetched thing. This is going to happen way faster than people expect because the economics are there, the tech is there, and the power generation is already there. Yeah, this is going to take off, guys. That's just
I want to.
Okay,
This is
wait,
take off.
wait.
some other fun facts. The entire planet, on average, I calculated with Grok and Opus, double checked, uses about 3.4 terawatts of power at any time, and the amount of total solar radiation that reaches Earth is 19,000 terawatts. So yeah, the sun's pretty powerful. This is what most people don't realize. They're not as practical now because you just need to buy a lot of batteries for setting that up, and we just don't have that kind of production. But up there, they're fine. Like they don't even really, they just need batteries for maneuvers and stuff. This is current tech right now that is available. And one of those GPUs just trained Karpathy's model.
Nano GPT, and they
Yeah.
started to learn Shakespeare, and also they fine-tuned some models. LDJ, go ahead, and then I have some comments on this as well.
There's the cooling problem that a lot of critics bring up in relation to this. However, these are in space already, and you do end up needing some amount of radiator area to have the heat end up dissipating into space, and it's not as easy to cool as some people think. However, it is possible here, and I think maybe one of the best succinct arguments in favor of eventual space GPU data centers is the fact that Earthland is scarce. If you do believe just a simple principle, that will continue to increase in price to some degree. And if you believe that our innovation in space technology will continue to innovate such that space transportation, space launches will continue to drop in price, then eventually there will be a convergence point where it just simply is cheaper and more practical to have data centers launched into space and stored there as opposed to being constructed on Earthland.
Okay, I want to be the voice of realism here super quick. There is the thing with GPUs failing at scale as well. I think it's going to be a little bit harder to invite a tech to switch out the GPU from the rack in space. This is my kind of point there. You'll need to pay NVIDIA way more because NVIDIA will have to have its own star fleet of people docking to space satellites and replacing GPUs. So there's that point. Besides this, there's network communication, but we've seen stuff like distributed training from news that requires significantly less bandwidth, so on the interconnect. So they're doing great work there. So shout out to News Research. If you guys want to learn about this, we have episodes about them, about Psyche network, etc.
I just want to comment exactly what you're saying. Okay, I get the idea, I get the plan, I get the vision, no problem. But it seems, at least to me, to be like the vision for let's make 3D printers so we can print houses on Mars. Okay, I get the idea, I get why we need to do that, but it's going to take a while to do that. And in the meantime, we can just print houses over here or improve the technology that we have over here and we need at the moment. I get the idea, but if you want to put GPUs somewhere that the environment will be beneficial for them, and maybe even train for procedures in space, put them under the sea. This can be a very nice step in the way, and I haven't seen anyone try to do that, even though you have unlimited cooling, for example.
All right.
So,
before we get off track here with under the sea
okay.
things, I would just want to call out this very viral, potent screenshot of StarCloud with the US flag there and the SSH terminal that is SSHing straight into an H100 on a satellite. I think that's super cool. I think that this is like, beside you have to also be inspiring folks. You have to like also make sure that folks are getting excited about what you build, and this is engineered excitement, and I'm all for it. We'll see if that makes sense. We should mention also that this is not necessarily related at all, But supposedly SpaceX is about to IPO, and supposedly SpaceX's Starlink is a bigger deal than people think. This is one of the reasons why, maybe, because people are looking forward to space as a place to put some stuff that we're very much constrained for on Earth in terms of resources. And also, speaking of space tech or other tech that's used for AI, Boom Supersonic, do you guys see this? Have repurposed their jet engines to support power generation on Earth, and they're opening up a whole new category there. So Boom Supersonic are a startup that has figured out how to fly supersonic planes without the booms, and they actually will go to production soon. So they have an actual plane, but in developing this plane, they develop turbines that are resistant to heat, and this is basically space technology. And someone realized that they can use them on Earth for power generation. And that turbine apparently doesn't need cooling or water or whatever. 42 megawatts per turbine is what we have a caller on the show, RiseOS. 42 megawatts per turbine, and they can move them, and they don't need water cooling. And I think this is like a great advancement as well. Somehow, Sam Altman is involved in Boom Supersonic as well. This dude's fingers are everywhere. It's incredible. So definitely a boon for technology. We are all looking at places like semi-analysis and other places to say, hey, GPUs are getting churned out by where is the power going to come from? So the power can come from the sun, like we just talked about in satellites. The power can come from Boom Supersonic. There is going to be innovation where the world requires it. So that's very interesting. And also, we have a person, Sun Sushi Commander says Microsoft or Google already tried GPUs in the sea. So hopefully next year in 2026 is going to be the year of alternative power sources and alternative placements for GPUs. Folks, let's move on. Devstral. Let's talk about Devstral super quick. Yeah.
So Devstral, a new software engineering specific model from Mistral. It is the size of 123 billion parameters, and I believe it's dense, so that means it's not MOE. It doesn't use less active parameters in its total, just a big chunky model. However, since it's only 123 billion total parameters, then that means that you don't end up really using much more than, at most, you're going to end up using like roughly 250-ish gigabytes of memory, which is much less than you would need to run something like a DeepSeek or a Kimi K2 at full precision. Meanwhile, it does seem to be scoring similarly to such models in things like SweetBench Verified, and even competitive here with Grok Code Fast 1, which a lot of people were praising for good coding abilities. Anybody recall any other benchmarks besides the SweetBench?
So we have SweetBench, we have VLM support in the beginning. I think just to call out that like many folks got excited about Devstral before. I haven't seen this deployed anywhere or in like Cloud Code, so I haven't seen actual comparisons to this. But they have also released Mistral Vibe CLI, something that we definitely should also mention. As joining other companies with their tools, let's count them out. Anthropic has Cloud Code, OpenAI has Codex, Google has Gemini CLI, and I think Jules CLI. Not sure if Jules has a CLI or not, but definitely Gemini CLI.
Their own. Quen has their own.
Quen has their own, and now Mistral is joining with the Vibe one. Everybody's competing for the same business because Cloud Code is an insane business.
To give a little bit more context, it can be used seamlessly with C-Line, Kilocode, Cloud Code, OpenHands, and SweetAgent. For sure, Mistral Vibe, which is a Cloud Code CLI competitor. At this point, it's very hard to compare the different harnesses. Everyone has their own and they look the same. From what I've heard, it works pretty fast. The model is great. You can definitely run 23B instruct model on a pretty high-end machine, but also you can run the smaller version on a laptop, which doesn't have to be that high-end anymore. It's going to be very fast, and for its size, I think it's the best we have at the moment. There is definitely competition about this type of agentic coding models, simply because they are running in a loop. You run them, they keep on burning tokens, and if you pay for the tokens, the guy selling you the tokens make money, so everyone is trying to get a piece of the pie. of this.
Yeah, we should also call out there is a reason why folks would use Codestral or Devstral versus the top agentic models. Opus is incredible. We all agree that Opus 4.5 is an alien from another universe that can code. It's like absolutely incredible. For deeper stuff, GPT 5.1 Codex Max or Gemini 3, they all are great. You pay for all of them, either you or your company. Open source models that are hosted on your machine serve two purposes. One, there's companies who absolutely do not want their code to end up as training data, or not even training data, just like their legal compliance teams do not allow to send that tokens out to other companies. So that's one. And two, folks who are price conscious, folks who can just run this. They paid $4,000 for a MacBook Pro and they want to utilize this. That's another reason to use these like local models for sure. So shout out to Mistral for releasing Devstral 2, state of the art on Sweetbench verified among open source models. I think they're just a tad below DeepSeek v3.2 on Sweetbench verified. So 72 Devstral and then 68 Devstral small. This is very impressive if you need local coding. Folks, let's move on.
May I just add one thing? It's very tempting to just use the best model all the time, especially on agentic use. I'll just use Opus all the time. I'll just use Sonnet all the time. But I highly encourage anyone that hasn't tried using the smaller models, the free models, the cheaper models, because for the vast majority of use cases, you would be surprised how good they actually are. And they are cheaper, so give them a shot. Some of them are basically free to try. So yeah, I think it's important to say.
Yep, 100%. Thank you, Yam. And folks, let's move on to the other end of the open source kind of spectrum where we have a bunch of models released in VLMs. I really want to cover some of those before we move on. While this happens, a super quick question to y'all about any announcement, news from any of the bigger labs about any stream releases that are coming or not yet? Not yet.
Not yet.
All right, we'll figure this out as it goes along. All right, so we moving on to VLMs, also in open source. Jina released Jina VLM, a 2.4 vision language model achieving state-of-the-art multilingual VQA and document understanding among the 2B scale models.
So I believe this is the same company, the same Jina, which they have basically a search engine MCP server that they make available to people, and a lot of people have been using.
Yeah, Jina Reader, and then Jina were also doing embeddings for like great embeddings. We had Bo Wang previously, I think, in Jina that joined us and talked about their stuff. It's the same one, yeah, definitely. So Jina has released a VLM. They use Sigla Vision encoder with Qwen3 1.7 base, attention pulley connector, whatever, and then state-of-the-art performance among the 2B scale VLMs. Let's take a look at these evals if we can. But is significantly more performing on multilingual understanding and bench on multilingual bench and general VQA tasks. They're like up there with other models like intern VL and Qwen 2 VL as well.
My main comments would be, I think it's great that we're pushing the envelope continuously on multimodal and vision, because I think a lot of the larger models have been lacking that, and historically a lot of the Qwen models and especially the DeepSeek models have lacked vision capabilities. So it's good that we're adding that into open source still.
Yep. Let's check comments on the Twitter space before we continue. Okay. Nothing super interesting, but I think we should be all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have breaking from Google releasing Gemini Deep Research Agent.
Breaking news without the ability to hit the breaking news button?
No. Yeah.
AI breaking news coming at you only on Thursday.
So we got a new API endpoint from Google, Interactions API, which is an API for an agent, a deep research agent specifically from Google Gemini. It is also coming, apart from being the total harness behind the API, as it seems, it is also coming with a new agent itself, the Gemini Deep Research Agent, which is, one moment, an incredibly powerful agent maxing out humanity's last exam above Gemini 3 Pro and GPT 5 Pro.
Oh, wow.
And also state-of-the-art on browser comp and deep search QA and out of nowhere that might be the best deep research agent at this point. Very hard to tell. And it's running in the background, as it seems.
That's incredible, dude.
Yeah.
The stat sounds incredible, and it looks like we can use deep research, which is, if you guys remember, deep research was first coined by Google, and then OpenAI kind of added deep research as well. And not to be confused with DeepThink, which is their version of an agent, but this is deep research agent to Phil Schmidt and some other folks, and to Logan for posting this as well. Thank you, LDJ, for the screenshot. Let's see if I can pull this up so we can share screen. Let's see if I can get this here. Yeah, okay. So we are seeing Humanities Last Exam at 46. Is that state of the art now?
I believe so.
Wow. State of the art on Humanities Last Exam, deep research from December 2025. Tops GPT-3, Gemini 3 Pro, tops GPT 5 Pro, which is a very deep, very strong model. Tops O3 deep research, which is just this year was 19%. Folks, Humanities Last Exam is almost at 50%. When we started reporting on Humanities Last Exam, we made the joke there's not going to be last, but most of the models there were like 5 or 7%. And then we saw incredible jumps. We're getting towards 50% on this very hard, supposedly very hard benchmark. It's just mind-blowing. The speed with which kind of we give you updates is breakneck speed. We have deep search QA as well. This model, agentic comprehensive web research eval, this model is getting 66, topping GPT 5 Pro. And browse comp, locating hard to find facts in browsing, is getting just a tad below GPT 5 Pro. And this is now available in the API from Google. A bunch of stuff from Google this week, so we'll also cover them. LDJ, go ahead.
Maybe something that is a good time to mention now. From Friday of last week, a company called Poetic, which submitted an ARC-AGI submission, which they have a scaffold they used over Gemini 3. And that ended up getting allegedly the top score, which after last ThursdAI has now been since verified by the ARC Foundation. And here I could share this link, but it's pretty impressive and significant, the amount of kind of efficiency relative to capabilities that this scaffold is enabling when used with models like Gemini. They also open source this entirely. So the scaffold, people can use it for other tasks if they please. They could test it in other domains. I think we're still waiting on some of those results to see how people end up applying it to other domains and how well it works in other things. But it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, thanks, folks. This is quite an incredible jump on top of Opus 4.5, which is already a very great model. On ARC-AGI 2, we've passed 54%. I think the previous state of the art, it was Gemini 3 DeepThink with 45%, and Poetic has, I think, broke the 50% on ARC-AGI 2 for the first time.
Yep.
Very impressive, with around $30 per task. And Gemini DeepThink was $77 per task. Thanks for this news, LDJ. So shout out to Poetic, and then we will continue.
Like to go back just 1 minute because of the Google release that they mentioned that we just talked about. They also released a new API, the Interactions API. And that is also very interesting. I checked it out while we were talking. And so one difference to the chat completion API we are used to, or the responses API, is that there is now server-side state. So that is a big difference, that the agent doesn't have to handle it locally, but it can be handled on the server side. It has remote MCP support. And it sounds like a good way to create more capable agents that interact with each other. So that is probably something that we will be hearing a lot about in the future. That sounds like an interesting concept for more complicated or more capable agents.
So optional server-side state, background execution for longer tasks, remote MCP tool support, and composable data model, in addition to state-of-the-art benchmarks on the actual agent. Public beta in AI Studio, and the pricing matches Gemini 3 Pro, charge per agent, turns, and searches. So shout out to Phil Schmidt, 6 months of development by the team. It's Phil Schmidt previously in Hugging Face, and now is doing agentic stuff in Google. So shout out to them. That's great. Righty, folks, let's move on to, we were covering VLMs before this. let's continue covering VLMs because we are at 1 hour into the show, and then we need to talk about big companies and different things. We covered some of the VLMs, so Jina's VLM we covered. Let's talk about ZAI and some of their releases, and then we will start moving towards
one that is really exciting me. You have made a great infographic again. Maybe you can bring that up. Yeah, this one. Because what's the best thing about this is GLM is already a very strong model. It's one of the best open source models, in my opinion. It's definitely a great model. It is very agentic. It can do a lot of tool calling, and it's even good in German as well. So it's one of the best models I've been using locally, or in my case, since I couldn't run it locally, I was using OpenRouter. And that's also how I tested the GLM 4.6V. And yeah, it looks amazing. So what we have here is 2 releases, actually, 2 sizes in this release. There's a 106B model and an efficient 9 billion parameter flash variant, a small one and a big one. And they both have 128K context, which is quite a bit. And as you put in your notes, it's a 150-page document or 1-hour video. So that is a lot of context for this. And even brings up the idea, what's more efficient, to convert the text into just text, or should we give it some pictures and put those into the context? That is something I want to test, especially if it's a very information-dense page. Anyway, so in benchmarks, it has been SOTA, open source performance, on Math Vista, 88.2 points, and on Web Voyager 81, where it even surpassed Qwen 2VL, which only had 68. And on OCR bench, it's also a state of the art. And yeah, it's great for front-end design to code or handwriting recognition and multimodal search. So it's a reasoning model that can do visual reasoning as well. I tested this actually with some picture riddles. For example, a cloud and a bow and arrow. So it wrote the correct answer, rainbow, and stuff like that. So yeah, that is an interesting model. What do we have?
106B model and efficient 9B flash variant, right? So like two models. I've tried, and we can try this, like, I promised folks some visual examples. I've tried this model, I think, directly on ZAI.chat. Let me see if I can show you this super quick.
By the way, it's free. The API pricing for the Flash is free.
Yeah. So we're now looking at a ZAI, shout out to previously FK Jipu, and we can select GLM 4.6V, and it's a great model, and zoom in here, and you can see that you can add the task of visual recognition, visual report, video understanding, which is great, and UI replication, which we're going to talk about at the late of the show. Right, sign in. Okay, so again, GLM 4.6 visual recognition, OCR scans, visual reports, extract and analyze key information, and then video understanding, comprehensive video intent and core understanding. I would love to test the video understanding, but for now, I want to show you that I have this image, not this one, not this one. Yeah, this one. I have this image that has a few weights and biases B's on the table there. I know exactly how many of them there are. There are 30. And I've tried this model, and unfortunately, the results did not give me 30. We'll try this together as well. And the best one that I've tried was Gemini, but we shall see once we are able to upload how many B toys are there on this table. But the cool thing about this, the Jipu shows you the thinking process. So here's the thinking process. If I'm able to pause this correctly, sometimes the thinking process goes, you see, it got it fairly close. So looking at the image, you can see there are 28 B toys arranged on the table. The B toys are yellow, black stripes clustered around. So it counts this. I looked at these thinking traces, Wolfram, I wanted to show you. As opposed to other VLM models that are sure about the numbers, these ones are not sure. So the thinking traces say between, I can see approximately 5 to 6 Bs, another 5 to 6, another 5 to 6. It's great that it has thinking, but this goes to the point before that sometimes thinking is not actually helpful to the model. And I've seen this model also go and get lost in the thinking itself. I've seen this happen, but I think supposedly this is what happens with the thinking models. They spit out tokens and they're able to look back at the tokens itself and then add them to the context of the model and arrive at a good solution. But other than this, I think video understanding is a pretty cool thing, and the image recognition is a pretty cool release from GAI.
And it's MIT licensed.
Yeah, we have applause here. Shall we move on from open source, folks? I think we've covered pretty much everything in open source. Last one, OpenBNB released. Let me get this on this table. Vox CPM 1.5 core. It's a tokenizer free TTS with 44 kilohertz hi-fi audio and with fine-tuning support and zero-shot voice cloning and developer-free fine-tuning. And I think that's super, super cool. So we have this in Hugging Face, Vox CPM from BNB. They just released it like $1,000 already this month. Sampling rate, high frequency details for better voice cloning. So 44 kilohertz sample rate, more efficient, and fine-tuning support as well. I think it's super cool that we're getting voices. We'll talk about the Google one, but I think it's super cool that we're getting voices in open source with voice cloning. But we need more.
There's been a lot actually. So that is a field where we have seen kind of an explosion recently.
Yeah.
With all the new models.
Time.
Microsoft pulled them again.
Time is all you need, Wolfram. So we're ready to move on to big companies APIs. I think we're ready. There's a bunch to cover there. Let's move on to big companies APIs. I think the most important thing there, not the most important, but I think the thing that I was very excited to talk about was definitely the block on Anthropic and OpenAI Agentic AI Foundation. Let me bring this up. And I want to hear from you guys as well on this topic, but I can absolutely start there. So we have news from the open source world in the big companies and APIs. Anthropic has donated MCP as a spec to the Linux Foundation. Linux Foundation is a public benefit, I believe, corporation that is in charge of Linux and ecosystem and a bunch of other open source and supports open source greatly. So we have this announcement from Anthropic that the MCP spec is now donated fully to AAIF.io, which you can get involved and contribute. It's no longer within the confines of Anthropic only. After a year and some months that MCP was out and every major company has adopted it, now we see a great contribution to open source. And we had a few folks from MCP that are involved in part of it on the show before. Folks who are doing the MCP apps angle. It's great to see that now these folks are organized into a non-for-profit foundation. It's a vendor-neutral hub. I think this is the most important thing. The folks who are participating in this OpenAI, we have a bunch of infographic founding and platinum members here. We have Microsoft, we have Anthropic, we have AWS, we have Cloudflare, we have OpenAI, of course. We have Docker and Cisco and Salesforce and GitHub and Hugging Face as other sponsors as well. Snowflake as well. And silver members include Hugging Face and Pydantic. All those folks are spending quite a lot of money for this open source initiative to continue because all of these folks also support MCP. There was a new release this week that Google Maps and Google Business and Google BigQuery also support MCP. So now you can use the Places API via Google MCP. So these big companies, we told you a year ago, or I guess in the beginning of the year, about MCP is becoming big. These companies now adopting, they're spending a lot of money to support the spec, which also means they want to spend a lot of money for the development of the spec to continue in a vendor-neutral way. And so I think it's very important that these all companies are connecting together. So I'm very excited about this. Also, as part of this kind of announcement of AAIF, they also told us that Agents.md is also contributed. Agents.md is an attempt to unify all of the cursor files and the Windsor files and all of the agentic IDE helper tools into one spec called Agents.md. I shall open this and show you because I think it's very... We talked about Agents.md when it launched, but I'll just run through it super quick. Agents.md is a place to kind of unify those files across, and it's supported by Codex and Windsurf and Cursor and Jules from Google and OpenCode. All of the kind of the IDEs, Z and VS Code, all of the IDEs that we like support, and this is the instruction, basically instructions for your agents. If you don't have instructions, you should definitely check them out. And there's over 60,000 examples of Agents.md on GitHub. So you use Agents.md, and then you basically cover what matters. If you prefer one language on top of another, you prefer one way of training models on top of another. All those agentic IDEs, they take this into account. And it's become the more agents you test, the more files you used to get. Agents.md is a great unifying function there.
I think it's a great thing about this news is not all about the formats like Agents.md. It could be Agents.txt. It doesn't matter, or MCP. It could be a different thing. The best thing is that it is a standard that is adopted by a lot of tools companies, and now that it is part of the Linux Foundation, that limits it as such. And it's not just a vendor like Anthropic that controls it. So OpenAI is more likely to contribute. Google is contributing more. And that is great for us that we are using these tools, because the interoperability, that is what really matters. Whichever the standard is, as long as it works and we can use it everywhere, then we can all make the AI better, make our tools better, make our agents better. And that is what excites me the most about these standardization efforts.
Standardization is awesome, and it's not exciting work. Folks need to understand there's a lot of talking to a bunch of companies, deciding on standards, like vendor groups and specific discussions and calls for adjustment. The whole process is very drawn out, and so I really shout it out to folks who are contributing their time and energy into making sure that whatever standard we have is continues to evolve. It's very important. The standard that's frozen in time is not a good standard. It has to evolve with the ecosystem. The folks who are spending their effort and money on this thing. That's great. Yep. I want to cover the OpenAI plus Disney super quick, because it does not look like we're going to get OpenAI updates anytime soon. I think LDJ, you called out that it may come later in the day, but I think OpenAI has an announcement together with Disney.
Disney announced they're investing $1 billion into OpenAI, as well as allowing Sora to be able to use various characters from IP from Disney, and I guess Marvel as well, because Marvel is, I guess, actually owned by Disney now. Yeah, and so there's a bunch of intellectual property here. And what's funny, which is not being covered as much, is literally the day before this, so yesterday, Disney just sent a cease and desist to Gemini, to Google, for basically, I guess so. Yeah, and so I guess this is a somewhat calculated partnership and move with Disney and OpenAI here.
Disney is considered very litigious about their IP, very strongly caring about the characters and IPs, and obviously they have an incredible IP like Star Wars, and obviously they're like one of the more brand recognizable IPs in the world. When Sora just launched, we got all excited. Folks on Sora were generating copyrighted material in their videos. I think this was like a big excitement of why Sora took off as much. And so we are very, at least I was very surprised to see that Disney is like the first one. Disney is now a VC, a $1 billion equity stake in OpenAI in a three-year deal. Curated clips are heading to Disney Plus, an API powering new tools. So they're going to use some of the technology on Sora inside Disney after many folks not liking kind of AI outputs. I think that's a very interesting thing. So Disney is now part of OpenAI, and you'd be able to generate yourself high-fiving Darth Vader starting very soon, I think January. This is a summary. What else is very interesting there? I think that's pretty much it. Agreement will make a selection of these fan-inspired Sora short films available to stream on Disney+. Disney and OpenAI is affirm a shared commitment to responsible use of AI that protects the safety of users and the rights of creators. Disney will become a major customer of OpenAI alongside using its APIs to build new products, tools, and experiences, including for Disney+, and deploying ChatGPT for its employees. It does put the fact that OpenAI's deal-making is just incredible. You cannot avoid OpenAI at this point, and the deal-making power of OpenAI and Sam Altman is just like on another level.
We have also seen other image generators create Darth Vader and so on. So it will be interesting if Disney will go after them even more now, if they have a deal just with OpenAI.
I don't think Nano Pro has any restrictions as far as I've seen. You can generate other people, likenesses. The one thing that people keep testing right now is this like celebrity selfie, and they're comparing that selfie to another one, supposedly OpenAI's upcoming supposed model. It's going to be interesting if Disney goes and sues other companies now that they have an agreement with OpenAI. I think that's mostly it in big companies, besides the Open Router year in review. Let's review the year in review. I think it's very interesting to talk about. If you're listening to ThursdAI and you're not familiar with Open Router, you must be new here, because we mention them at least once a week. So Open Router is this incredible place where you can basically get API versions of all the models that have all APIs across the world, And what happens in OpenRouter is that they will route your API call to the resource that has the most availability. For example, if WNB Inference, a reminder, Weights and Biases is the only sponsor of ThursdAI, and we have an inference service called WNB Inference, and we host open source models such as GLM 4.5 and Kimi K2, etc. And we are also contributing our inference service into OpenRouter. So if somebody goes directly to OpenRouter for inference, they will route to the best available resource. And we basically are also part of OpenRouter. OpenRouter thus becomes the #1 source for people who want availability always and great pricing as well. And because of this, they have tons of information, because another thing that you can do as an open source developer is to mention the type of use case that you're using. It's optional on OpenRouter. You can specify the app, like meta tags, and you can the type of use case as well. A year of AI use cases. So let's pull this up. I really want to talk about this, and I want to show this here. Let's pull this up and talk about OpenRouter, a year of AI. State of the AI announces 100 trillion tokens of real LLM usage. This is a big, folks, this is a very big document. It's available in the PDF as well. And I think the two most important things are here. The rise of agentic model. So this is a year, a span of a year. Folks who are just listening, we're looking at the reasoning versus non-reasoning token trends of all time. Above 50%, around 60% of tokens since early 2025, 60% of tokens are reasoning tokens right now. It's really funny. We're going to cover this next year. The rise of reasoning in the world of AI is just incredible to see how quickly everybody changed their mind after OpenAI announced test time compute with 0.1 preview in September of last year, I believe. And now, again, 60% of all tokens that are used in OpenRouter are reasoning tokens, with effectively zero on January 1st of 2025. This is like a huge trend. You guys want to cover another trend? Feel free to grab one.
What is interesting is also the amount of tokens used for roleplay. That surprised me, because I'm using AI to just chat sometimes and have some fun as well. And what people probably don't know, you can use the big models like Opus, Gemini Pro. You can use all of them there directly via OpenRouter without the chat interface around them. So if you want to just chat with them, you get an uncensored way to interact with the model. No guardrails or anything in there. So that is also a specific advantage of using OpenRouter in there. Because you can even use zero retention endpoints where there are not even the logs kept. You can enable that in your privacy settings. And I think a lot of people are using it that way, and why this is so popular over there, which is also an interesting thing. But I didn't expect it to be that big. Yeah.
Find the actual numbers for roleplay, but programming increased from 11% to 50%, around 50%. And I think the second biggest category is roleplay, right?
Yeah. For open source models, it's over 50%.
For open source models.
For open source models. That's a primary use
OpenRouter,
case, actually.
I think there's a place for me here to inject with this week's buzz super quick while we're getting all excited about OpenRouter. So let me slide this in super quick, as it's very contextual, and then we'll be back to discovering how people use AI and what purpose. So let's go to this week's bugs, like super quick. Welcome to this week's Buzz, a category on Thursday. I talk about everything that is up to date from the show's only sponsor, Weights and Biases. And this week I have a very announcing thing, as we're now just talking about OpenRouter. OpenRouter has a new integration that they've dropped, a new beta feature that's called Broadcast. And if you go to OpenRouter and you turn on Broadcast in settings, you will see the Weights and Biases weave is now part of the instrumentation here. All you need to provide is an API key, which you can get at 1b.ai/authorize, like this. If you go here, you get your API key, you paste it in here, you paste your team as well and your project, and then you can also filter out based on API keys that you own, which API keys will be used, so you can set a specific API key to be traced. Essentially, this allows you to do is to trace everything that goes through OpenRouter directly into Weave. Weave is a tracing and evaluation tool from Weights and Biases for LLM developers such as yourself. So if you're putting any type of model on production, like a folks said here, OpenRouter is an incredible way for you to test out new models as well. You want to be able to evaluate them as well. So without any code, you can just trace everything. This is not perfect, obviously. For some agentic use cases, there's multiple API calls in succession. So I would like to group them. But if you want to try out Weave right now without even thinking about the code implementation, which is very easy. It takes 3 lines of code. We auto patch everything. But if you want to try out Weave right now without even code, you can go right now to OpenRouter, configure Weave, paste an API key in here, and then start seeing traces streamed into Weights and Biases Weave. I think it's very cool. And now let's continue with OpenRouter because we're off this week's buzz. So let's chat about this report a little bit more. I think there's a few more highlights that we can do in geography. Definitely want to look at that.
Yeah, that was also interesting because Germany is pretty big up there. I think we are on 3rd place after USA on 1st and China on 2nd, right?
So all we need is for Yam to move to Singapore, and we will have covered all of the AI top countries that it use. Yeah, Canada's not even here, Nistan. We need to move you to South Korea.
China is
No,
lower
I'm good.
than I
I'm
thought.
good.
You're good in Canada. So get Canada up here. So top 10 countries by token volume, United States is almost 50%, Singapore, Germany, and China is using OpenRouter as
Now
well.
the question is, how many percent of the Germany is from me?
We're in there, dude. We're in there. Yeah, right after. All right. Right
Yeah.
after the UK. Okay, we got to stop using
User retention as well, folks. We must talk about user retention. I think it's very interesting. We are on ThursdAI dedicated to bring you all the best new models that come out and tell you why you would use them. Sometimes I will admit we're doing a poor job because like from week to week, we're like, hey, this model is the best. And then next week, we're like, this model is the best. So obviously we're part of, I don't know if we're part of the problem or the solution, but definitely retention is a problem with models because as you will see, retention drops off. OpenRouter shows the Cinderella glass slipper phenomenon where Gemini 2.5 Pro retention rates, they absolutely drop low and low. The lab released Gemini 3. Do they expect the Gemini 2 will keep retention? I don't think so. I know for a fact, though, for actual enterprises and use cases of AI and folks who are fine-tuning the models, many are still on 3, and some of them are like still on Qwen 2.5. People don't want to reinvest a lot of money into kind of getting the new hardest AI models all the time, because if it works and don't touch it, and the whole purpose of open source models is that you put the weights once and nobody's going to change them. They're not changing. The API doesn't change, and you have predictable pricing for those models. For many enterprises, retention, at least for open source, is there, but this is not the use case for OpenRouter. The use case for OpenRouter is you use it to try out the new model. So you can see GPT 4.0 mini drops in retention 1 month after from 100% into less than 30%. Very interesting things to be learned here. So you can see folks tried out Llama 4 Maverick for exactly 1 month and then basically stopped using this. Gemini 2 Flash also pretty much the same thing. The only one that was held for a long time is actually Gemini 2.5 Pro is very impressive. Look at this. 60% were still there after 2 months. And for Cloud 4 Sonnet, even 3 months in, 50% of people still use Cloud 4
That's
Sonnet.
a class slipper phenomenon they talk about, because like if the shoe fits, you stay with it. So people find a model, they have a use case that no other model solves, they try it here, they find a model that solves their new use case, and then they just stay loyal to the model because it fit once, so they keep using it until they may have another use case, and when they find one that fixes it, they switch to this. So it's not always running the newest model or anything, but you found a model, you use it. I'm still using Sonnet a lot as well.
I want to say that these plots are hurt data scientists, the core traits. I totally agree that these plots are significantly biased towards try the models and not that I use these every day. What I want to say is that I don't have the data with me, but I would have looked much deeper into the data, because maybe this can be explained by some sort of a Gemini 2.5 being free or default on a very large platform, like maybe Copilot, maybe a C-Line or something like this. I just want to say that I would not infer from this something about the models themselves, whether or not they are good or they are not good, just based on these graphs.
No, this is definitely a great call out. Yeah, also, we need to remember this is from OpenRouter. OpenRouter uses skewed as well. Folks can go directly to OpenAI, and many do. Many. OpenAI talked about having 4 million developers on their platform. They're not talking about OpenRouter. They mention OpenRouter as part of those developers. Many folks go directly to Gemini as well. This is like a use case of OpenRouter. Their use case is skewed. Many people are using OpenRouter to do this exact thing we talked about, to test between models. And when you test between models, you obviously don't get stuck with it. OpenRouter also has a list of the actual apps that use OpenRouter a lot. Let me try and go and see. So you'll see, like, it's most.
This one is really interesting. I saw it as well.
Yeah.
Because this is much less skewed, because if you use it within an app, you're not just testing out a model too much, you're probably just using the app.
Yeah, I'm going to try to pull it out. Hold on.
I used to find good models. You can test them yourself. You can check the evaluations that have been done on the leaderboard, but you can also just check what other people are using, which app they are using, which models they are using with which apps. So there's a lot of interesting data in there.
Yeah, we're again taking a look at this. The usage Grok Code Fast one.
This is so interesting
because it's free.
It's free, but it looks more than just being free. Respectfully, it just looks insanely larger than even Sonnet.
Let me go to the apps super quick. Top apps. So you can see the top apps for OpenRouter is KiloCode and Klein, which do basically AI coding agents for VS Code. LLM is like a router. Generator AI is roleplay. RuCode is like Klein, also coding. So you can see a lot of this. This is a very interesting one. Brazilian AI platform for law, Minutal AI. Minuta IA. IA is Spanish for AI. Silly Tavern is like an LLM front end. So you can see the apps they're going into. This is great also discovery place for apps that use OpenRouter. And definitely there's a bunch of agentic use and tool call use that's grown.
Waifu engineering, by the way, with the Silly Tavern.
Silly Tavern is a great client because you can configure everything. I love it.
You can do the waifu engineering in it, but yeah, I agree. Customized. It's great for customization.
Guys.
Yeah.
Breaking news. Yep.
Let's go. AI breaking news coming at you only on Thursday.
Yeah, okay, so I guess I'll go. So GPT 5.2, Advancing Science and Math with GPT 5.2. Unfortunately, I knew about a few minutes ahead of time because The Verge, it seems like it leaked a few minutes before they dropped the blog. But here, if we just scroll down to the first benchmarks.
So let's do an actual announcement. Folks,
okay, sure.
Just announced GPT 5.2, strongest model yet for math and science work, with the paper and the blog and the system card. Let's take a look at some of the evaluations. Go ahead, Luigi.
Yeah, so GPQA here, this is unfortunately already saturated, but these scores here is around what Gemini 3 is getting. If we continue to scroll down, Frontier Math, now this is a pretty significant jump. So I think this is right around where Gemini 3 also is. So I guess this is their answer to Gemini 3. Frontier Math being the really difficult mathematics benchmark. It's often containing a lot of longer horizon tasks, things that would take a mathematician hours or potentially even days to solve. Okay, we can go to the next ones.
Yeah, let's take a look. They say GPT 4.2 is not only strong at graduate level science problems, we now regularly see our frontier models contributing solutions to previously unsolved and increasingly subtle questions in mathematics.
Oh, back to that sentence. In this case study, we describe how GPT 5.2 Pro helped resolve an open research problem in statistical learning theory, documented in a new paper on learning curve monotonicity for maximum likelihood estimators. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we not only get GPT 5.2, there's also GPT 5.2 Pro, which is a very deep thinking version of GPT 5.
Talk about the fact that we got another one 2 weeks ago.
You mean 5.1?
Wait, that was 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I think 5.1 was a bit more. I think
it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, about a month.
Yeah, so there is the system card I just linked in the chat.
Yeah, let's take a look at this.
And apparently they report this model has significantly lower hallucination rate as well, which is impressive, I think, because artificial analysis has a hallucination benchmark where GPT 5.1 was already scoring really good and better than Gemini 3. Oh, here we go.
Yep. Lower hallucination rate with browsing enabled, 0.8 on incorrect claims compared to 1.5 in GPT 5.1, and lower responses with 1+ major incorrect claims, 5.8% for this GPT 5.2 versus 8% in GPT 5.1. It's really interesting that GPT 5.1 has more than GPT 5 in this chart.
Yeah, I think sometimes with this new RL paradigm reasoning, some people refer to the models as feeling deep fried sometimes from just being like traumatized in the reinforcement learning, you could say. And I think this is a good sign, the fact that they are showing GPT 5.1 got hurt a little bit in worse hallucination rate, but this is helping reverse that trend back down.
So we obviously need to play with this model, but looking just at the release, this seems like a very much focused model on coding and math.
Answered math. No
Do you
coding.
guys feel like this is a legit answer to Gemini 3 from OpenAI?
What we're seeing so far, I mean, it's very limited amount of benchmarks, but it seems like pretty close in score based on that. But also ARC-AGI score just dropped, and I just linked that in the chat.
Let's go. Let's take a look.
And this is looking interesting.
Let's take a look.
Does anybody have access to it?
Right now, I'm going to get access and play with it. Just
Tell it, make a realistic plan to cure cancer. Let's just see what it does.
So ARC-AGI just verified on their leaderboard for ARC-AGI 1, GPT 5.2 Pro is getting a 90.5% score. This is on ARC-AGI 1. On 2, GPT 5 Pro, GPT 5.2 Pro is getting 54%.
Even the high is getting over 50% for the regular one.
What am I? Oh, the regular one. Okay. This is really confusing because there's GPT 5.2 with multiple levels of reasoning, like medium, high, and extra high.
Extra high. All right.
Which runs like 10 things in parallel and chooses between them, right? So there's the thinking model, and there's the thinking model times 10 that chooses between the best possible solution. And that tends to be very expensive. This is why you see it on the chart above the 15% per cost per task. But the significant, it's not that significant of a bump. LDJ, look, like the extra high is around 52%, and the GPT 5.2 Pro is around 54%. So only.
Yeah, and look at Gemini 3 Pro down there in the green. There you go.
And go ahead.
They should prompt it to come up with a better naming strategy, see what it does. But I think they are targeting the user complaints because most people just use ChatGPT, and the main complaint that you hear online is still hallucinations. So I think this is what this was targeted towards. At least that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah,
I would like to try it.
OpenAI is just posting that it's now rolling out to everyone. So supposedly we'll be able to try this right now.
It is a little
wish
more
I would.
expensive than the API, by the way. So it
I would have
is
shown
now.
you, but hopefully.
Let this be a lesson to you kids. Do not enable computer use on your
computer. Run sandboxing. The sandboxing built-in is very good. If you can get it to run, is very competently done. They use like the proper Linux way of doing it, and that's been out there for quite some time. Because
go. I was gonna say I just linked an image for another benchmark that we haven't seen yet in the StreamYard chat. And so this is from the system card, and this is OpenAI PRs and what percentage of them they have this benchmark of real-world OpenAI pull requests. And what's impressive here, so this is showing GPT 5.2 with no browsing is scoring higher than GPT 5.1 Codex Max, which a lot of people were saying Codex Max was already competing, or in some cases even better than Gemini 3 for a lot of people's use cases. So the fact that this is doing better than that and is not even a coding specific model, I think this is really good progress.
This is a OpenAI pull request coding internal benchmark, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't seem to have access yet, but let's see what Sam Altman said about this. It's the smartest generally available model in the world, says Sam Altman. Of course, he would say this is like Apple's.
Yeah. The API cost is a little bit more expensive, by the way. So it's $1.75 input, and then about, I think it said $14 output. Yep. And if I remember right, I think this is like roughly 50% more expensive than the original GPT-5 and GPT 5.1. Hopefully, possibly, they're also emphasizing that this has a lot of world knowledge, and maybe that means it's a little bit bigger of a model.
I think, did they mention something about this model being the same one that beat IMO or something like this? I remember there was rumors that said that like they will give us a model that gonna beat everything on international map.
I think they did say eventually they would, like in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
I think maybe this is not it though, since it doesn't seem to be mentioned.
Yeah.
But the GDP eval that was actually just on your screen right now, that's really impressive score, because GPT-5 only got 38% in that. And that's supposed to be a set of tasks in a benchmark that would indicate some type of significantly economically valuable tasks that can contribute to GDP.
Yeah.
And that's a big jump right there.
So 70% of GDP eval, GPT-5 got 38%. And Sam Altman suggests try to make slides, spreadsheets, code, and much, much more. Folks, I think we're just in time for this breaking news for us to cover the news. It's on Open Router. And if you want to pull up and test it live on the show, I think it's going to be great for folks.
Trying, but it says unavailable.
GPT 5.2. GPT 5.2 Chat and Pro are both on Open Router via OpenAI. Let's say chat. And then let's take a look. Yeah, I'm getting not a valid model error.
I can drive.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Yes.
Share screen, entire screen. Yeah, why not? Okay, are we good? So here is 5.2. Just 5.2. I wasn't able to run the chat one. I'm just saying, come up with a realistic plan to cure cancer.
Nice.
Define what cure means. Biggest, fastest win, tobacco and game vaccination.
Tell it to prove P versus NP and cure cancer, and I don't know, like give it something impossible.
Yeah, whatever.
I think this is maybe the instant version you're using instead of the thinking version.
Yeah, it is the instant one.
Yeah.
So let's just try. How do we?
I feel like the original GPT-5 instant and even the 5.1 instant were not very good at all. And so if this is even giving pretty good answers in the instant version, I would say that's definitely an improvement there in the more ineffable capabilities.
I wanna, while this runs, listen, let me show you my screen super quick, folks. We have this chart that was posted also from OpenAI where GPT 5.2 thinking gets 100% of AIME, the competition math 2025 with no tools. 100%, as opposed to the previous version getting 94, Anthropic Opus 4.5 getting 92, and Gemini 3 getting 95. So 100% of math. This is a significant boost in math capability in models. Again, frontier math, the very difficult one, tier 1 to 3 and tier 4. 1 to 3, they're getting 40% on top of Google's 37, and they're coming a little bit lower in tier 4 than Gemini 3. So they're putting like a dot in Gemini 3, I'm not sure. Oh, that is like the state of the art. But besides this one tier 4 frontier math thing, GPT 5.2 is state of the art on all these benchmarks. So we bench Pro, which is significantly higher version of Sweetbench Verified, I believe. GPK Diamond, which is Google-proof question and answers that you cannot find on Google. You have to be a PhD specific in this level to get even 85% on this. 92% of those. Frontier Math, like we said, at 40%. ARC-AGI, state-of-the-art, both on 1 and 2. So 86% on 1 and 52% on ARC-AGI 2. And LDJ, I think the biggest jump that we see is GDP Val, knowledge work tasks at 70%, the biggest jump from both of the other ones. This seems like a very significant model. Feel free to continue and to tell us what you're seeing.
Oh, I just ran out of credits for some reason, like literally right now.
You need more credits.
Just in time. I haven't used Open Router as much, but it looks pretty good. I don't know, we need some more. It still feels about the same. Again, this is just the instant one.
Oh, okay.
So if somebody else just wants to run it on Open Router,
I'll take a look. Let me see if I can.
There is a new blog post that actually just dropped. Apparently, I guess they forgot to drop all the blog posts at first. So now they actually have a full thing that says introducing GPT 5.2. And this blog post now actually has all the things we want, like benchmarks and specific comparisons to the past models and examples of coding tests and a bunch of things like that. I'll link this in the chat.
Let's take a look. So we are getting this is the smartest model right now that everybody can have access to. I'm assuming. Let's take a look at this super quick. Yeah, oh, this is the comparison.
It looks like this. So it's very hard to know.
Yeah.
And in this comparison of the comparison we had up earlier of Gemini 3 Pro compared to GPT 5.2 thinking, it seems what I'm seeing here, it's GPT 5.2 thinking is beating it in every single benchmark, except the non-tools version of Frontier Math, where it's losing by 4%.
oh, I tried the chat version now. Apparently I did have credits. It got the Martian question. I usually give it pretty spot on. It is good for math.
We also have some comments from folks who have tried it before. Let's take a look at some of the feedback. This is usually very helpful because these agent labs, they test out models all the time. So from Windsurf, we got GPT 5.2 represents the biggest leap for GPT models in agentic coding since GPT 5 and is state-of-the-art coding models in its price range. The version bump undersells the jump in intelligence. We're excited to make a default across Windsurf and several core Devon workloads. Jeff Wang, CEO at Windsurf. Warp is the terminal, says best-in-class agentic coding performance, scoring 61% of Terminal Bench 2. Okay, so this is absolutely also state-of-the-art. 61% of Terminal Bench 2. GPT 5.2, Warp's agent is significantly better closing the loop, verifying its own changes. Klein has said, been really impressed with GPT 5.2. It plans deeper, executes better, noticeably performs at higher level. So supposedly if we go to Windsurf, and then there's an update there supposedly for GPT 5.2, and we're going to take a look. Also, folks, we need to remember we have passed the 2-hour mark, and I think it's soon we'll close down the space. But we're doing a celebrate model release here for GPT 5.2, and as a reminder, also, benchmarks do not tell you the full story. You have to run these models, you have to use them, and it's a very interesting thing. As a response to code red from Sam Altman, OpenAI moved and pushed the release like super quick. And the question remains whether or not this will help bring some users back to the actual ChatGPT, because yes, this model is great maybe for coding, and maybe many people will use this in coding agents, but will this be enough for people like my mom? And I think this is most of where OpenAI still gets the hyper growth from, and they need that hyper growth to prove that this insane evaluations are very high.
All right, I'm asking it to generate a giant nuclear reactor to just like power the whole planet. How big would that reactor vessel need to be? And yeah, again, I'm just trying with the chat. It is, I think it's pretty good.
Folks, I think we're getting one hell of a model. Look at this. For long context, there is the MRCR version 2 benchmarks with 4 needles. This measures long context performance at long context. If you're looking at my screen, you can see that GPT 5.1, for example, has a drop-off after 8K tokens. You can see in 32K tokens, the drop-off is under 50% of performance, 44% of performance. GPT 5.2 is at an incredible 95% at still 32K context, 85% at 128, and still falls under 70% at 256,000 tokens. I want this comparison in MRCR to other models. I want to compare this to Gemini. I don't see a Gemini comparison, but can anybody try to find MRCR for me, please, for Gemini 3? Because I really want to see, because Gemini 3 is obviously 1 million tokens in the context window, but OpenAI is not comparing themselves to Gemini here, which is a shame, because I do want to see the comparison.
Say in the chat model, it does tend to summarize some things up a little bit too much. I don't like that when I ask for a deep, long engineering answer to design a new type of engine or new reactor or new solution and stuff. I want to see all the math and all this stuff, but it tends to just, at least the chat one that I tried, tends to wrap up the answer, even though it does the math correctly.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's my initial criticism right now. We'll see.
The thing about MRCR is so which one was on the screen? Is it 8 needle?
Yes.
There's like a bunch of 8 needle, okay. And what context was it? Because I know there's also a bunch of different scores for different contexts.
MRCR V2, 8 needle, non-con.
What does the x-axis show?
No,
oh, okay. So this is what it looks like, a little bit below 50% at 128K. Okay, at Gemini 3 is apparently about 54%, if I'm looking at the right one here.
Oh, wow. So this model is at 85% at 128, which is very impressive.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
So I want to see its visual capabilities. Let's see. So folks who are just tuning in, you are joining our GPT 5.2 release party, and debugging is getting increasingly harder to get to know these models at depth and try to figure out what they're good at. But from what we've seen so far, the very, very impressive things are long context on this model. This model seems to be outperforming Gemini 3 and Opus 4.5 on pretty much every benchmark that OpenAI has posted, including ARC-AGI 1 and 2, including long context, including hallucination bench as well. Very impressive ability to generate UIs, it looks like, from the examples. And what else do we have there?
Not as good in ASCII art than Gemini or Opus.
It is also more expensive, which would lend credence to the fact that it's larger.
Yeah. Alrighty, folks, I think it's time to call it. The thing that I wanted to mention super quick, before knowing that GPT-5 is going to get released, I wanted to cover some stuff from Google, and I will mention them super quick because I got very excited about this, even though GPT-5 is a bit more exciting. So Google has a bunch of products that are AI native right now. So in addition to just adding MCP in maps, etc., I wanted to share this one. It's Stitch. Google purchased a company and then they turned it into a product called Stitch, and they've just added Gemini 3 in there. So obviously we're getting excited about GPT 5.2, but the differences between them are not that large. The difference that is important for non-coding folks is how you can use this. And Stitch is a pretty cool thing that it generates full-blown, it's like a vibe coding platform, but it's more for design and generates these full-blown interactive things. This is my attempt to create a dashboard for indoor plant care with watering schedules. So you can see this thing. And this thing is like a full-on HTML-ready template that you can export and use in your websites. What's the coolest thing about this is that you can hit share and export. This is a new thing. And this exports directly into AI Studio or Jules, the coder agent. So you can directly export it into a repository and start working on this. So you can iterate on your designs fairly quick. And now that it uses Gemini 3 Pro, I think you also use Nano Banana in there as well. I want to show you a project of mine that I have, this graveyard theme project, which I keep testing. This is my test. I have this generate a website as a graveyard for older models where great models get to rest. So you can see that Gemini 3 within this Stitch by Google generated this beautiful website, and then even the submission page and even the management of this thing. I found this product to be super cool, specifically because, again, distribution and the way you use these models is very important. Not many people will use Cursor, and this is a way to also redesign some stuff. So shout out to the Stitch team for this. Alrighty, folks, I think that this was pretty much everything that we wanted to cover on the show besides the textual stuff. We got a new model that seems like it's competing on every category, GPT 5.2. Alrighty, this concludes our live stream for today, folks. Just a reminder, if you're tuning into any part of the show, if you missed any part of the show, we are recording live. The show is then edited down to a podcast and a newsletter on Thursday. Please don't forget to subscribe to our show. If you missed any part, there's chapters. You can skip the TLDR. We did celebrate the GPT 5.2 release, but we also talked about a bunch of other releases this week, including a bunch of open source ones. The show is hosted by me, Alex Volkov, an AI evangelist with Weights and Biases, and co-hosted by Wolfram, Ravenwolf, LDJ, Nistin, and Jan Peleg. All folks bring their different types of expertise. We've been doing this for over 2.5 years, and next week is going to be probably our last scheduled show of this year, where we're going to do a recap of a full year of AI releases. And we need to go and update this recap because GPT 5.2 was just released just now. So that recap is going to be hopefully up to date by then. With that said, I want to again shout out Chroma for hosting me this week in San Francisco to be able to stream to you guys even while I'm traveling. If you have any vector AI needs, Chroma is the best database. It's open source as well. It's super cool. Shout out Chroma, Jeff, and TJ for helping me through this super quick. Yeah, Yam, let's land on your most beautiful website.
Okay, so this
Not bad.
is the result of GPT 5.2 the max of the max. Build super fucking impressive website that is also beautiful as fuck. That's the prompt. Everything default. That's what we got in Codex. We craft cinematic websites and products that move fast. Look unreal. Look unreal. Convert like crazy. Okay.
It's vibing.
Yeah, it's vibing. Look, it's nice.
It's nice. But there is
Look, it's purple because it's AI. The
Yeah,
AI
we
likes purple.
Yeah, we like the purple.
Yeah.
I have to say, I was more impressed when I tested the Gemini and it did this interactive stuff. Remember when it did the AI new stuff? This looked a bit corporate, I would say.
Yeah, Gemini is really good at UI, and this is why I wanted to show the Stitch thing, because you can use Stitch with the Gemini 3 Pro now. But GPT 5.2 is also dope. Folks, we have so much to choose from. We have GPT 5.2, still GPT 5.1, Codex Max, Opus 4.5, Gemini 3. Models are competing for your attention as though are the companies. I am personally not sure that GPT 5.2 is going to be the Hail Mary that prevents OpenAI leakage to Gemini, because again, this is like a very smart model, but folks are still leaving to Gemini. So we're not at the end, but we're almost at 100% ARC-AGI. We're crossing 54% ARC-AGI 2. The intelligence explosion is booming, and we're putting fucking GPUs in space, which is also super cool. So this, I think, summarizes ThursdAI for December 11th. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, missed any part of the show, ThursdAI.news, and thank you for the co-host and the sponsor, Weights and Biases, for the show. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye, everyone.